Lee Cole, who we've discussed on this show, he released his interview with a ring boy from 1986 and 1987 in the World Wrestling Federation. So the way this was structured, he had a co-host on, and they sort of set the table with a lot of the background information that people listening to this will probably be familiar with, some of the more specifics about the ring boy scandal, who the players were. And then about 25 minutes into the show, they start airing clips of the interview that Lee Cole conducted with this individual who did not appear by video. There was just a photo of him and just goes by Sean. He did not want to disclose his last name, but for some context, he worked on the ring crew beginning in 1986 when he was about 16 years old, and he was in foster care at the time and stayed with the company until August of 1987 when he left to go join the army. And he had several tours of Iraq. He then later became a police officer. And when he learned of Tom Cole's story, this would have been in 1992, he certainly was familiar with some of his own experiences. So it sounds like they're going to be breaking this interview up, and it was a little like all over the place because you were airing the interview and then they would pause and react to certain answers as they're going along. So, and then it just kind of ends abruptly at the end, and it looks like they're going to continue to roll the rest of this out. But some of the notes from this, first of all, like this individual, Sean, I mean, he came across like very credible, like just the details he had. I mean, this is someone that had kept notes of when he was on the ring crew, like down to remembering a date of when he happened to be ringside to hold the WWF title when they were doing a double shot that day in Philadelphia and then in Baltimore at night for a cage match between Hogan and Kamala. And that totally checks out. There was a February 14th show that they ran Philadelphia in the afternoon and Baltimore at night, and it was headlined by a cage match. But he had, like, it looks like he kept like contemporaneous notes of like his itinerary at the time, what towns he was going to. And again, he was in foster care, and then links up and was like, Mel Phillips was the one. He was based in Philadelphia, so he would get picked up by Mel Phillips, and they would travel to a lot of the Philadelphia shows. And then he didn't get into any like graphic details, but did describe staying at motels with Mel Phillips. They would stay in the same room, and conveyed, some of the accusations you've heard of Mel Phillips about grabbing at feet, pulling the feet near his crotch, sitting on top of him, and at times being in his underwear around, like, this is like an underage boy, and believed that Mel Phillips was grooming him. And he mentioned the fact that there was a well-known wrestler that had warned him to be careful around Mel Phillips. Didn't have any specific accusations towards Terry Garvin, but did state that when he was around him, he felt nervous, had a bad vibe from Terry Garvin, and also was asked about, did Mel Phillips take you across state lines? And he said yes. Like, he was in Philadelphia, but he would be taken to Baltimore. He'd go to New York, went as far as Connecticut to the company warehouse. And I mean, this is where you're looking at, the potential violation. If, Mel Phillips was taking underage kids across state lines, and what was happening on the road with some of these kids. I mean, it just kind of paints the picture for you. So, I mean, there are only so many of the ring boys that have actually gone on the record with their names. And this would be the third one, at least that I'm aware of. Of course, Tom Cole, Chris Lose was another one in 1992. And I mean, this is one, we don't have his full name, but I mean, certainly does, provide, at least in regards to Mel Phillips. And we don't know what more is to come from this interview that he conducted. So it's up on Lee Cole's YouTube channel, Wrestling with the Devil, if you search for it. And it's the latest video. And we will see if this gets any kind of traction. I think that there is certainly a lot that can be focused upon with this early 90s ring boy scandal, but are enough people going to be connecting that with the current ongoing scandals of a different nature, but trafficking nonetheless? And like, I think if you are looking to paint a picture of a culture, I mean, this was something that was, Mel Phillips at one time was let go by the WWF because of issues that they had heard about him with kids. And then he's brought back shortly thereafter with the understanding that he was going to steer clear of kids. Like, that is a really like alarming fact, that here was somebody that it's very hard to paint the picture that they did not know what was going on with this guy, and that he was fired at one point in 1988 and brought back shortly thereafter. I mean, this was Mel Phillips is no longer alive. He died in 2012, but just a frightening individual that, I mean, I think that we probably don't and will never know the full extent of like the scope that he had, but you do see these patterns among kids that had come from like broken homes, and here they were being taken on the road, and God knows what was happening, but we've certainly got at least enough details that it paints a very, very just horrific picture.
It's whether or not this will perhaps break into a sort of mainstream collective attention. I'm not exactly sure, but if there's a chance and there's a time for this particular story to garner interest, it would be right now. And at the very least, I think people that are looking to dig deeper into everything that's going on with in the history of this company's culture as it relates to sexual abuse, this is the time that I think people are at least in a position where they might be most interested and maybe most, I guess, capable of, I don't know, pushing it towards some sense of justice, if one could even exist.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the key people involved in this are no longer around anymore. I mean, Lee Cole is someone, he knows this inside and out, this story, and it's a very personal story for him, given Tom Cole taking his life back in 2021. So this is something that is extremely pressing for Lee Cole, that, I mean, he just knows this inside and out, and probably has a lot more information that he has not reported publicly out of confidence from others and what he has gathered over the years. But it's an interview, like, it's not a comfortable listen. None of this stuff is. I mean, day in and day out, this is just it's just a lot of stuff that is coming to the surface, or that you're revisiting with a different lens, that you are looking at things in a different way now that all of this has come out. And I think a lot of people are sort of sensing that it's a very it's very hard to separate these stories from everything else that are covered day to day within professional wrestling, at least for me.